Well, we made it. We've been talking a lot about qualifiers, preps, whatever you want to call them, for the Kentucky Derby throughout the winter and into the spring. Well, the big race is upon us. Saturday, of course, the 151st running of the Kentucky Derby, and on Friday. We haven't talked a lot about the Kentucky Oaks, but we're going to dive into that a little bit. I'm going to challenge Bailey to make me talk her off a horse, or a filly, I should say, of her liking. But we'll talk about the Derby first. Looking forward to this edition of Horse Sense with me and Bailey Armour. Up next.
Welcome back, and welcome if you're new to another episode of Horse Sense. I'm Bailey Armour, joined alongside the man, the myth, the legend, Scott Shapiro himself, as we cover the biggest events in horse racing this week, the Kentucky Oaks and the Kentucky Derby. Now, if you're just joining us for the first time here on the Horse Sense podcast, we work with a company called Xpressbet, which is the absolute best place to bet the races online directly from your phone, no matter where you are, if you're at the track or watching the Derby at home. If you want to sign up for Xpressbet this week, we've got a special brand new promo code for you. That's HC250, and I'll put it up here on your screen as well. HC250 at sign up will get you a $25 bonus for every $100 you wager in your first 60 days, up to a $250 bonus. So plenty of action to get in on the races this Friday and Saturday, and even beyond that as we continue through the Triple Crown into the Preakness and then the Belmont Stakes in June. There's my sign up spiel. If you're going to sign up and play with us, make sure that you opt in to the promotions that we've got running on Xpressbet and Xpressbet this week. That's a $10,000 exactathon on Oaks and Derby Day, which we'll continue to talk about throughout today's show, where if you hit 6 or more exactas on Oaks Day and then again on Derby Day, you'll win your share of $10,000 in bonus cash. So plenty of reasons to sign up and play the races with Xpressbet this week. And Scott, now that I've got that out of the way, what have you got going on this week?
Well, no, it's an important week, and welcome to any new viewers of the show, and thank you to all of those that have followed us, through the start of the year. We kind of changed things up and brought you Horse Sense in a new way. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Here we are, though, at the Derby, and so get signed up if you have not signed up, but I assume those of you that have been watching are already Xpressbet or Xpressbet customers, but if not, great offer to take advantage of. I'll be playing the exactathon myself. I'll have a more in-depth article on that on the blog tomorrow, being Friday, but we'll talk about that in the upcoming segment. But just excited for the week ahead, and I'll be taking advantage of the promos, and then real excited for my spaces this week. I'm going to do it. Start at 8 a.m. I literally started doing these a year ago. Now we call them Shappy Hour, but it's been exactly a year. My first one was on the Derby. So again, I'll have that up on my Twitter at ScottShap34, as you can see on the graphics on below me. I will have that up sometime Thursday or Friday. We've Doug Knockman, who does one thing. Doug's going to come with is his prices. He's a biased guy. He does work, and in that range, and he's not a guy that's going to accept a lot of chalk. So if you're looking maybe some prices to include or get talked off favorites, hopefully we can help you with that. Well, we started talking in depth about the Kentucky Derby last week. We talked about the pace. We talked about betting. We talked about a little bit of everything for the most part on Horse Sense. But one thing I noticed in the comments, and yes, thank you for letting us know, your opinions as Bailey has asked for, and just some general thoughts, was there seemed to be a few of our viewers and listeners that were not impressed with me trying to tell you not to play the Super, because, it does tend to be one of the better wagers on the day for a horse player. My thought is always, it's a lot to ask if you're going there, with a limited budget. If you're going there with that, you're probably not a big time player. So that kind of all those things together make it a very tough task. But that said, let's talk about how we might play a superfecta, if we had a little bit of a smaller budget.
Yeah, definitely appreciate all the love and support in the comments about the Super. Now they're on my team and not your team, so we can try to play this Super in the Derby. Now, talk to me about how you can play this in. I mean, I know you said it takes a lot of bankroll, especially with that dollar minimum, but maybe not necessarily a ton of bankroll. But how can we find value in the Super and not spend our entire budget on just one wager when there's plenty of action throughout the rest of the day?
Well, finding the value won't be the issue. It's being able to have a legitimate chance at hitting it or feeling like you're, putting $36 in with playing the lottery. That's where you've
Yeah.
got to separate. So, in my opinion, in order to exercise or utilize a smaller budget in this wager, you've got to take a couple of stands. Whether you want, I think the most realistic and honest way to do that we think of is singling a horse for first and then maybe another one for second or third. And then you give yourself some leeway with just two sets of combinations that you're, multiplying to create the final total of the wager. When you start to use multipliers in more than two races, that's when it really starts to add up. So to me, maybe, it doesn't matter who you like, but let's just use the case of journalism. I think he's going to win the Kentucky Derby. He has to win. I'm singling him on top, right? That part makes sense, right?
Sure.
Right. So then he has to win. Okay. Now the second spot. Now, if you're someone that's never played, horse racing, which I doubt you're listening to us still talking, but if you are, the superfecta is 1 through 4. You might think if you've never played it that you're just going to pick cold. Oh, I like 10, 7, 2, 3. Well, that's a completely long odds. So what horse players do is add different horses in different slots, and it ends up being a one ticket with a ton of different combinations potentially. So then, you need to take a stand probably somewhere else. Do you think that Sandman, Sovereignty, or do you think maybe, some long shot's going to run second? Take your stand there. And then maybe, I think we've seen over the years, the Derby, the winner is probably, there's been plenty of outliers, but it's probably the least likely position in the race for there to be chaos, because we've seen third and fourth is about trips, is
It's
about
hairy.
blow. Yeah. So we've seen horses, obviously we've seen horses win and not do much later, but certainly
Yeah.
runners that do third and fourth. So I think that's the way I would approach it. Again, you could, it doesn't seem logical the way we think, but you could just as easily key a horse for third and key a horse for fourth.
Yeah, and then have a little more on top. I think I've got I have a strong win opinion, which is the same opinion that I've been repeating for months now, which we'll get into. I've got some horses that I think could finish second, and then maybe inside the try, and then a little bit there in that fourth place spot for the super. So I think I'll probably just have to play around with some combinations and see where I can kind of manage my bankroll in this wager, just so it doesn't get too out of hand, because it's a long race. It's a 14 race card. The Derby's only race number 12, so you've got to get to that 7 p.m. post time, starting out, a little bit earlier in the card with maybe some more friendly wagers. So it'll definitely be an interesting one for me to try this year for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I just think if you have any questions, obviously you can let me know, and anybody out there can also let me know on Twitter or X or whatever you call it. But let's segue here to get kind of more of our opinions. I think people that have been watching know it, but talk a couple minutes about how we would play the exactathon in terms of the Derby, and to why don't you once again tell people what the exactathon is and then how you would approach the Derby for one of your 6 exactas.
Yeah, so the Exactathon is one of the most exciting and personally one of my favorite promotions that we run here at Xpressbet and FirstBet. So that's going to be a set base prize pool of $8,000 each day, where if you hit 6 or more exactas, you'll automatically win your share of the $8,000. And then the player or players who hits the most exactas overall of the day, whether that be 10, 12, 14, however many, is going to win their share of an extra $2,000. So it's $10K per day. The same offer on Oaks Day on Friday, and then again on Saturday. And those are 2 separate offers. So if you hit 3 on one day and then 3 on the other, good playing, not quite enough for the promo. They've got to be all 6 on the same day, one day or the other. So you've got 2 chances to win, and plenty of options, especially in this Derby. I know that I'm looking at some horses for my exacta. Definitely Sovereignty on top, and many of them. I think that's been my Derby horse here for a long time now. But then playing underneath in that exacta, trying to find some horses that, especially maybe shallower closers, like we've called journalism in the past, or some horses that have stuck on a mid-pack. So right now I'm looking at a Sovereignty over Burnham Square, and then maybe like a Rodriguez Sandman alongside that one as well. So what do you think?
Solid. Yeah. I would just recommend, again, you don't there's not a way you have to play exactas, but I don't think, the exacta boxes, remember, you're betting against yourself. Anytime you're making more than one combination, you're technically betting against yourself. So like, you're playing, one. Let's just say you're playing a 1 with a 2-3. Well, you can't hit a 1-2 and a 1-3, right? So half of your bet is automatically lost. So if you're exacta boxing horses, which means adding all the combinations up so that any order they come in, you really start to, you utilize a lot of combinations. You want to make sure if you like any of the logicals, journalism, sovereignty, Sandman, probably want, unless they're with long shots. Otherwise, you probably want to make a decision whether you want to key them on top or maybe key them underneath. But I like I like the way you're doing it. And if you can get sovereignty over anybody but journalism, it's going to be a pretty good exacta for you. Contest aside, where you're just trying to knock off winners. The one thing I did want to mention before my Derby exacta about the contest that I've thought about is, it's a 14 race card, so this isn't as easy if it was 10, but you want to think someone's got to hit 6. Well, what if if it's a chalky day and everybody's able to hit 6, that's great. And maybe I'll get X number of dollars. But the way to really maximize going after it is if it's a difficult day and hitting exactas in races where other people didn't. So maybe some little game theory there to think about. For the Derby, though, I'm not going to take that approach.
You're not going to try that one in the Derby?
Well, I just, I think everybody knows at this point, including yourself, that I've been on journalism for, pretty good amount of time now. I'm not going to come off them. I've seen nothing to change that. And I continue to think that a lot of people are going to be incorrect. If he breaks well, I think he's going to be 6th or 7th. I don't think he's a closer. I think that's just the way those races with a lot of speed and compact field at Santa Anita played out. And I also just don't think if he has the speed to at least, to be there, I don't think they want to leave themselves with too much to do. Probably more fearful he doesn't get there versus getting caught from behind, whether that's the right way to look at things. But for the exacta, sovereignty is the easy horse for me to take. If I was going to do that and play an exacta, I would only play a cold exacta. And I'm not confident enough in sovereignty finishing second. So I'm going to take a different approach in terms of exactas with the Derby. Contest aside again, and I'm going to play journalism over a couple of price horses, one being East Avenue, who continues to grow on me, and a lot of reasons for that are the price just is really large compared to some of these other horses. We know he has superb talent. Did he peak already? Huge chance of that, but 35-1, I thought he ran well in the Bluegrass, and if he, I think he's going to try to sit just off, which could be an underneath type trip. And then I'm going to use Publisher as well, who, if they do go fast, I'm hoping, it'll take a lot. And if I'm betting trifectas, I would play those two horses under journalism and sovereignty in that order. But for exactas, I think the play is to leave sovereignty off and try to get either Publisher or, whoever I just said, East Avenue. Derby week, East Avenue in the exacta underneath, because I think both of them are, that would be a worthwhile exacta even with the chalk on top.
We might not agree on our Derby winner, but at least we can agree on one thing: tossing Owen Almighty.
Well, we've talked plenty about the Kentucky Derby all winter and, even today and last week, but we haven't touched on the big one for the ladies, the Kentucky Oaks, they call it. And it's the run for the Lilies, Bailey. And, this year, full field, not surprising, but we do have a standout in terms of resume, in terms of the morning line, and in terms of how many handicappers and racing fans are seeing this race. And that standout is number 11, Good Cheer. 6 for 6 for Cox and Godolphin. Extremely well bred, like most of the Godolphin, daughter of Medaglia D'Or out of the damn wedding toast. 3 for 3 over the surface. There's not a lot to dislike, but there are some things to question if you're going to swallow a short price. I'm curious, though, Bailey, are you going to swallow a short price in the Oaks, and what are your thoughts?
I just don't think I can take that short of a price. I mean, she's going to be below even money on Oaks Day. She's, like you said, she's undefeated in 6 career starts. She's obviously not a bad horse. She likes Churchill. We know that. Brad Cox likes her. Godolphin likes her. Everyone likes her. I just don't like her that much. I just don't think that she's as good of a filly. I mean, I am not as keen on any of these fillies as I was on Torpedo Anna last year going into the Oaks, who won the Oaks at, I believe, 5-1. So you can definitely find value in the Kentucky Oaks. I think that there are probably 3 or 4 horses that I would give a much more equal shot to against Good Cheer in this one. And the one that I want to focus on today is the number 8, 5G. She's got some of the highest career speed ratings in this field, if you take Good Cheer in or out of it. She's earned 100 points to the Oaks in that Gulfstream Park Prep, and she just barely lost to Quiet Side in the Honeybee at Oaklawn, who makes an appearance again in this field. And I really loved the way that she ran that Honeybee, because it just seemed like she was so stubborn and she did not want to let Quiet Side go by her before she eventually did. I think I learned more about her running second in that race than I did probably any of the others. You'll probably find more value here for her than you will. George Weaver is not a trainer that we see a ton in stakes races, especially paired up with Manny Franco, but I don't see a lot of downside to this horse, especially at a more respectable price than something like Good Cheer might go off at. So what do you think about 5G?
You want me to talk you off this horse?
Yeah, try.
Well, I think it's good. This is a filly, especially at 12-1 on the line. I think I could make a case for either way, and I'll probably utilize her in the wagering accordingly. I definitely prefer her, definitely price, but I think I prefer her in this spot to Quiet Side. Maybe that'll come back making me look poor. But the one thing to mention about that Honeybee and for both of those back in late February, that was a very speed favoring racetrack at Oaklawn. So while 5G was impressive to get out from the far outside and make the lead pretty easily, those two ran 1-2 around the track. Muhima, who was scratched out of the Oaks, would have, I think, been able to, was considering the race all along, but didn't really end up panning out as the Cox Barn and Shadwell had hoped. But that's the main knock in that race. Overall, I think there's 2 knocks with 5G. One, I do have distance concerns here. The pedigree. There's quality road on the bottom, but just kind of watching the horse run at, and the speed. But more than anything, the distance is the likely race shape. Is she going to her best races obviously have come on the lead or right there off, which I would expect her to be in, again, assuming a good break. But you look around, I mean, Simply Joking has been really fired up in the morning. She's on the inside. I'd be very, very surprised, assuming a good break, if she's not involved early. You've got Fondley, who's tactical, but then you've got Lacara. All of her best races have been on the lead. And then you've got Tenma to the outside of 5G. Anna's promised to that. And Quiet Side to the far outside. So to me, the pace makes it difficult to see how 5G is going to win. But if 3 or 4 of these fillies do not get out of the gate well or don't show up, that changes that pace scenario. And that's why it's hard to talk you off with extreme confidence off a filly that's going to be a pretty good price.
Extreme confidence, you say. What do we think about using fillies like Lacara and then the number 6 Ballerina d'Oro in an exacta for the exactathon with someone like 5G, just completely taking Good Cheer out of it? I looked at a picture of Ballerina d'Oro galloping this week over to the course there at Churchill-Downs that Courtney Snow took on Twitter. If you take a look and you find these like online protractor tools, she's got like 116-degree stride angle. I mean, she really covers. Yeah, did you? So she really covers some major ground, and I saw that and was kind of, taken aback by that. I mean, she's another Medaglia d'Oro, just like Good Cheer is. Came out of the Gazelle really well, and at 10-1 on the morning line here, I'm definitely going to include her in my exacta place for sure.
This is a filly that I thought a lot of. I thought the Demoiselle was really good, splitting the 2 speeds back in December. And then she missed a little time, so I didn't hold the Devona Dale against her at all. In fact, she was 3-5 in the Gazelle. I didn't think she could lose the race. Yeah. It was pretty underwhelming, but to your point about what you're seeing, and it feels like, I listened to an interview from Chad Brown, and he's claimed he doesn't know where the lugging in came from. So it's not something like Sierra Leone where it was, not exactly the same type of deal, but where he knew it was an issue. And he was, always trying to fix it to make him finish the deal. So I totally get it with Ballerina d'Oro. I didn't love the last race, but she should get, to my point about the flow, I think she should get a good trip. You get Pratt for the first time, nothing wrong with that. And you get a pretty good price.
As always, thank you so much for watching another episode of Horse Sense as we covered all things Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks this week. Make sure that you sign up to play the races with FirstBet or Xpressbet with the code HC250. That's H as in horse, C as in cents, 250 to get that $25 bonus for every $100 you wager in your first 60 days. And if you want to find out more about handicapping the Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Oaks, and plenty of other races this weekend at Churchill, make sure you check out the Kentucky Derby Wager Guide presented by First. You can find that on news.first.com, and it'll have everything you need to handicap these big, full races. So thank you so much for watching, and let us know in the comments who your Derby or Oaks horse is in 2025.